Welcome to the Emerging Biotech Leader, where we help biotech leaders maximize the value of their therapeutics from translational development to product launch. We're your hosts. I'm Kim Kushner.
And I'm Ramin Farhood. We are here to help you navigate the pitfalls of the biotech industry and illuminate the path forward. Welcome to the Emerging Biotech Leader podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Bijan Elahi to the show. Bijan is an international expert and educator in risk management for medical devices with over 30 years of experience working at the largest MedTech companies and as well as the startups. He's currently a technical fellow and a professor at Drexel University in Philadelphia and previously served as the Medtronic corporate advisor on safety risk management of medical devices. Bijan is also a founder of MedTech Safety and Education and Advisory Company, where he has trained and educated over 10,000 individuals and professionals in worldwide. He's also a key contributor to ISO 14971, the international standard for medical device risk management, and he's the author of the best-selling book, Safety Risk Management for Medical Devices. We are thrilled to have him share his insights with us today. Bijan, welcome to the show.
Hello, Ramin. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Bijan, I guess the first question that I want to start with is your background and your career path. Can you walk us through your fascinating career path, touching on your aerospace engineering background at NASA, transitioning to MedTech industry, moving into teaching and education, and currently your focus on advancing knowledge in risk management for medical devices?
Okay. Yes. I started my career in aerospace. I used to be fascinated with aviation and space as a child. So I started my work at aviation and aerospace. And my last job in aerospace was at NASA, where I was working on the space shuttle flight systems. And I was in charge of safety. And what had happened is that I was hired along with a small group of people to oversee NASA after the Space Shuttle Challenger accident. NASA wanted some outsiders to come in and oversee their safety. So I was one of those few people. And so I worked there for a few years. And because I was working in safety, I was giving lectures in conferences around the world. And one day after one of my conference speeches, a gentleman approached me from the audience and asked me if I could give him some help. He said they're from the MedTech industry, and this was in the early 1990s. And of course, aerospace by then had about a 40-year head start on safety, system safety. And MedTech industry was pretty young at the time. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll give you some advice. And so they benefited from that, and they liked it, and they told some of their friends who came and asked me also for some help and advice. And so that kept growing, and eventually one of those companies asked if I could just come and work for them. So I said, yeah, and I moved into the MedTech industry and started working there as a full-time person. And then I started working in MedTech in cardio department. I was working on an atrial defibrillation system, and I worked as a systems engineer and a product developer for actually about more than 30 years now in the MedTech industry. And then that went on for a while. I worked in some large companies, some very big companies like Medtronic and Boston Scientific, and then I was hired by a small startup company in the Netherlands to develop a deep brain stimulator for Parkinson's disease. And while I was, so I moved to the Netherlands, and while I was there, I was asked, and one day I was asked if I would accept an intern. And this was a lady that was getting her doctoral degree in biomedical engineering. So I accepted her, and so we worked, and then she finished, and she was then going to get her degree. The university professor asked me if I would come to the graduation ceremony, give a speech, and grant her diploma. So I said, yeah, sure, that'll be fun. And so I went over, gave the speech, granted the diploma, and then we had a reception afterwards. I was having cake and coffee with the professor, and then she said, hey, would you consider teaching at our university? And I said, yeah, that doesn't sound bad. Yeah, I will. And so then I worked a few months and developed a graduate course for doctoral students and started teaching. So that's how I ended up getting into teaching. It just was coincidental. I wasn't planning on it. But then I found that I really enjoy it, and I liked it a lot. And I've been teaching ever since. And this has been quite a few years. I'm probably almost 10 years, maybe more. Then while I was teaching, the professor asked me if I could recommend a textbook for this course that I'm teaching. And I said, well, let me look around. I looked around. I could not find any textbooks. And I asked other people to look around. They said, we can't find any either. So then the university asked if I would write a textbook. I said, okay, sounds good. So then I took about a year and a half, and I wrote a textbook on the subject matter, safety risk management for medical devices. And for the longest time, it was the only book available on this subject. And just recently, actually, in the past few months, another book has been written on the same subject. And so now more people are writing about this topic. Yeah, and then my publisher told me that my book, because I wrote my book in a way that is easy to read, it's not really it's approachable, it's not difficult to understand and use. So my publisher tells me it's the best-selling book in the genre of medical books they sell.
Thanks for sharing that with us. In your experience, Bijan, what have you found to be the key motivators for companies, large companies and startups? I'm assuming that their key motivators may be slightly different or very different in risk management for medical devices.
Yeah, risk management, it's a very good question. Why? Because risk management is not easy or cheap or free. It's time consuming, it's difficult, but it's important. So what motivates people to do it? Large companies have a better appreciation for the impact of poor risk management. The consequences of improper risk management could be enormous. Smaller companies, like startup companies, typically don't give it as much attention in the beginning because typically the small startup companies are working on new advanced technologies. And the main goal that they have is, can we get this device to work? Just get the technology to work. And so getting a workable prototype to even start testing it, So the main focus and energy of small companies usually is on technology and engineering of it and the science of it. And then as they get a little further along, they say, oh, okay, now we need to think about safety because if we're going to make a product. Whereas larger companies know ahead of time that they are trying to make a product. So they put focus on safety earlier. In the end, they all have the same motivation. They need to produce safe products because unless you have a product that you can demonstrate is acceptably safe, you cannot get it approved. And if you can't get it approved, basically you have nothing. You can't sell your product, you can't market your product, and so it's key. It's a really fundamental thing. And then other motivators, again, for companies who are more established, that recognizes from their experience is cost savings. Because if you don't do proper risk management, you end up designing things or products that may not be acceptably safe. Then you have to go back and change your design or redesign. It could be that worst, you have to even scrap everything and start over. So that is a very expensive. And then another motivator is accelerating time to market. Because if you do proper risk management and write a good risk management report, when you submit that to a notified body for approval, likely they will approve it faster. The fewer questions asked, it just gets through. But if you don't do good risk management, when it's hard to understand for a reviewer or maybe inadequate, they will send your file back to you with more questions. You have to do more work. It goes back. You may go a few cycles. And every time these cycles may take 6 months. So now suddenly you may find yourself a year or more delayed because of poor risk management. So that's another reason people pay attention to this activity.
How early, Bijan, do you think is early enough to integrate risk management in developing your product? Is there a timeline that you think about when the companies need to start thinking about risk management?
Yes, Ramin. The traditional saying is as soon as possible, but really there is a reason for saying that. My recommendation is that as soon as you have a concept, so this is, you haven't even designed anything, you just have a concept, you say we want to design this product to do X, and it's going to be generally like this, these features, these facilities. And then you can start doing risk management on the concept to see, well, can this concept be safely made? You're doing predictions. Basically, risk management is a lot of predictive engineering. You're predicting the future. Can we do this in a way that is approvable? And then as designs become available, you keep iterating. Risk management is not a once and done. It's an iterative process. So you do an initial risk management on the concept, then you do risk management or analyses on the designs. And as the designs iterate, you keep going forward to keep up with the latest design of your product. And eventually, of course, the final design has to match your final analysis. So the earlier, the better. And Ramin, one thing that I would like to emphasize is that it is much cheaper to do it right in the beginning than try to fix it at the end. Some studies have shown that it may cost as much as 1,000 times more to make a correction when the product is released as compared to when you fixed it in the beginning in the concept level. And it's just imperative to incorporate risk management in the product development process. In fact, ISO 14971 expects this, that if you look at your product development process, you should find places where it says do risk management, so on.
Right, right. So the way you're explaining it, Bijan, it seems like risk management can also be viewed as a competitive edge when your product does come to the market, relative to other competitors that may be in the market. If the higher your safety standards and your safety level relative to other competitors could be viewed as a competitive edge from a marketing perspective. Is that what your experience has been?
Absolutely, yeah. It almost goes without saying that if you make safer products compared to your competitor, people will buy your product. So it does give you a competitive advantage. And the converse of that is that if your product is unsafe, it has a tremendous adverse effect on your company. Besides the fact that you may have to do recalls, which is expensive, and your company reputation may go down, you lose sales. So really, safety is paramount. And in the companies that I've worked at, large companies, they emphasize that patient safety is number one, that everything else revolves around it. Because without patient safety, why even exist?
Where do you see the medtech companies typically struggle with risk management? Especially for startups. As you mentioned, the bigger company, they have the resources, they have the budget, they have the right talent that they can have, and they also have the history of risk management. So it has become part of their DNA. But for startups, where do you see the medtech companies struggle with risk management? Is it from a financial perspective? Is it just that they don't know what that really even means, and they don't look at it more of a strategic approach to their developing the product?
Well, technical struggles are the same, but there is one extra struggle that a startup company would have, and that is in terms of training and budgets. Small startup company, a lot of times they don't have anybody on staff whose job it is to do risk management. So they just gonna assign it to whoever they can, maybe somebody in quality, maybe somebody in engineering who may not even have the training, or they may have to hire a consultant from the outside to help them. So that's the struggle for the small companies. But once we go into the technical domain, the struggles are the same. Risk management has to be done methodically to analyze and estimate risks. And so from a technical perspective, the struggles are the same. Risk management is about analysis and estimation of risk, and estimation of risks requires data. For example, you need to know what is the likelihood of a particular failure, or what is the likelihood of somebody getting injured in this hazardous situation. That data is hard to come by. a lot of times this boils down to educated or scientific guesswork. Sometimes you have data that you can use, but I'd say in majority of the cases, data is not available. So this estimation is one of the areas that all companies, small or large, struggle with. Of course, the larger companies have a slight advantage in that they can look at their historical data, the reliability information, and extract some knowledge from that and derive probabilities of some hazards happening. That's one area. Another area is the benefit risk analysis. We are required by ISO 14971 to demonstrate that the benefits of a medical device outweigh its risks in order for it to get approved. Well, as you can imagine, benefits and risks are not of the same unit. Benefits are something like improved quality of life or reduced probability of death or things like that. But then risks are different, they're in different units, different thing. So to compare apples and oranges is difficult and becomes subjective. Now, there have been some attempts as to quantifying this and making this more objective, but at the moment, there is no consensus on how to do this. So generally, it boils down to a scientific or educated opinion by a panel of experts, maybe some physicians, some people who have seen products like this, and comparing the benefits that it's offering based on objective clinical evidence as compared to the predicted risks, and make a judgment as to whether it's worth getting approved. Although you should also know that sometimes products that have higher risk, that may seem even too much risk, get approved because there is no alternative. Some years ago, artificial heart was approved where it had a 40% chance of mortality. So imagine you get a medical device that there's a 40% chance it's going to cause death for you. Well, why would you accept that? Well, the problem is that without it, you had a 60% chance of dying. So when the better products came up, then this first product was no longer approved for use. And so this is called the state of the art. As the state of the art improves, future products have to be equal to or better than the previous products as far as benefit risk ratio.
So you have to show the superiority over the product that is already existing in the market.
At least equivalency, or superiority.
Right. And then building up on that, Bijan, so how do the leaders in MedTech companies balance the innovation and risk together, right? Because I'm sure you want to be as innovative as you can, and you want to be, right, and pushing the envelope and be on the cutting edge of the science and the device that you're developing. At the same time, there is a stringent risk management, especially in a very well regulated environment. How do you balance those two? And stay kind of like in the middle of both.
The innovation, of course, is driven by competitive market conditions and also the sense of wanting to do good for the population. You want to produce the best therapies, best products for your customers. And of course, to do that, a lot of times you have to push the edge of the state of science and knowledge to use the best and latest. So that is the driver in that direction. The driver in the opposite direction is that, oh, hold on. Is this going to be safe enough? So these two kind of balance each other out. Risk management is in charge of ensuring that the product that you're trying to deliver has benefits that outweigh its risks. So depending on technologies, and something that is traditional and old technology is something like a pacemaker. If you want to do something very different, very new, you still have to compare it with existing products that have been on the market for decades. If you're coming up with something brand new, maybe you have come up with a technology that's going to cure Alzheimer's. Well, there's nothing else for it, right? So there's a little bit more tolerance for risk, and so if you can show even incremental improvement in conditions, given the higher risk, that's acceptable. It's a kind of they balance each other out.
Right. And the acceptable is not really black and white either. I can totally imagine that you're sitting in a boardroom and having a discussion of with the engineers team that want to push the innovation for developing the product, and the risk management team that say, well, if you take that path, these are the chances, these are the risks that you may encounter. And this conversation goes back and forth, and I'm sure sometimes it gets pretty heated.
Well, yeah, and this discussion also happens on the regulators' side. So both in the corporate side, they're saying, well, we want to make the best, latest product, and these are the risks. Regulators also say, well, yes, we want the best things for our patients. Is this risk acceptable? On both sides, they're doing this kind of a balancing and thinking, and it is not black and white, as you said. It's subjective, and but you know what fixes that subjectivity is post-market risk management, because we make the best judgment that we can right now, and then when we approve a product and release it, once it goes in the market, we are continuously monitoring it to see how is it doing. Is it as beneficial as we thought? Are the risks as we thought? Um, do the risk controls work as we thought? And then if you see that things are worse than you thought, then we would recall the product or not sell it anymore. But a lot of times, which is a good thing in life, is that I found that things are actually better than you thought, because engineers tend to be very conservative, and they maybe even exaggerate the risks a little bit, which is okay. It means you're releasing safer products, but that means that when you get market data, you find that, yeah, actually the product is doing better and is safer than we thought. So that's a good thing.
And Bijan, you talked about the regulators and ISO 14971. Can you, for some of our listeners that may not be acquainted with 1971, can you tell us what that is and why even it exists?
Yeah. So ISO 14971 came to existence in year 2000. Before that, there was no regulation or no standard, I should say, no standard for risk management of medical devices. And as I mentioned to you, I started doing this in the early 1990s. So I was doing risk management for about a decade before there was any standard. And so companies were struggling. They didn't know how to go about doing this. Everybody was doing the best that they could. Some people would do failure modes and effects analyses. Some people do fault tree analysis. Some people just did subjective judgments, and there was all kinds of ways of doing it. Then ISO 14971 was released, and it was a effort that started actually in about late 1990s, maybe 1998, and it was an evolution of some European standards that, with a collaboration of people for I think over 100 countries that came together and worked on this, and so the first edition of it came out in year 2000, and then it gave people a framework. That's the nice thing about ISO 14971. It is not very prescriptive, because there are so many kinds of medical devices that it's not really possible to regulate everything, especially that there's going to be future devices that haven't even been imagined. And so you can't really sanely write something that says this is it for everybody and for all times. So they created a framework, and this tells the manufacturers, these are the things, the activities that we expect you to do. For example, you should estimate the risk. You should analyze your risks. You should control your risk, evaluate your risks, and then you should balance the benefits against risks. Then after you release the product, you should monitor how the product is performing in the field. So this all seems like very rational, good things to do. And then it allows the manufacturer to write their own internal procedures, or risk management procedures, for example, SOPs, some people call them, standard operating procedures, that is appropriate for the company and fulfills the requirements of ISO 14971. Then 14971, the reason you ask why does it exist, it created consistency, and it created a way for the regulators to also be able to judge medical device companies. Because before then, a regulator to approve a product would have to really make a completely subjective judgment. So do I think this product should be approved or not? I don't really know what they were supposed to do, but like, okay, this is good enough, or that one is not good enough. But now the regulators have a benchmark. They can say, okay, I know that you need to fulfill the requirements of ISO 14971. And if you do, it creates a presumption of acceptability of risks and benefits. In fact, this is stipulated in EU regulations, EU MDR, that conformance to a harmonized standard creates a presumption that this device will meet the requirements of basic safety and performance requirements of the EU MDR. FDA also recognizes ISO 14971. So this makes life easier for the regulators, the approvers, and makes life easier for the companies because now they know what to do, what's expected of them, whereas before they didn't know what was expected of them. So this, and by the way, the standard has evolved. It has gone to two more iterations. The second generation of the standard came out in 2007, and the third generation came out in 2019, which is the latest and considered the state of the art.
Well, where do you see, Bijan, is the standard, the future of these of ISO 14971 in the next revisions? What path are we going?
So, Ramin, ISO requires that all the standards be revisited every 5 years. So every 5 years, they're supposed to be revisited to see, are they still good? Do we need to revise them? Do we need to even sometimes retract them? And so this is the life cycle of the standards themselves. Typically, these standards are revised, and ISO 14971 is also not perfect. I mean, it's very good, but it's not perfect. And the authors of the standard recognize that it needs to be updated and improved. And I'm sure that it will be revised again, and a fourth edition of it will come out. The thing about 14971 is that the revision of it is complex. So it's supposed to come out every 5 years, but between 2007 and 2019, it took 12 years to get the next edition. So even though right now we are in the 5th year of the standard, because remember I said 2019 was when it was released in the 3rd edition, and now in 2024, which is the 5th year mark. So I think at the end of this year, 2024, they're going to ask for opinion from the community to see what do you think about the standard, should be updated, and it's probably going to take several years before there's a lot of discussion and voting and revision before the next edition comes out.
And I'm assuming the manufacturers are also very much engaged and involved with their input, and they're providing their feedback to every single revision that comes out.
That's right. Yeah, manufacturers also have representation on the boards, and they vote. But it's not that it's only the manufacturers. There are a lot of stakeholders that participate. There are consultants, there are governmental agencies. Manufacturers are also there, so it's not one-sided. It's a very balanced group.
Clinicians, I'm also assuming that clinicians are also involved in the process as well.
Yeah, there's no restriction as to who cannot participate. There's a lot of involvement from all kinds of disciplines to provide input.
So, Bijan, where do professionals in the MedTech industry get educated on risk management? Where do they get all this information? I know you have a book, and there's I'm assuming that there's a lot of other programs out there, but where is that really core of the education that leaders that are interested can get this type of information and education?
Yeah, very good question, because we talk about all these skills. So where do you get the skills? Where do you get the knowledge? As I said, I'm a professor and I teach in universities. So that's one place to get the education. Unfortunately, very few universities actually have incorporated risk management in their curriculum. And so right now, there is, at least from my side, there is a push to encourage universities to consider and include risk management, because when companies hire graduates from universities, they expect certain skills and knowledge, and they need risk management. All medical device companies need risk management as a skill in their new employees. Well, very few of them come from universities that have this available. So what then happens is that there are two ways that people get the knowledge and education. One is the ad hoc on the job training, which means they come on the job, they maybe one of their fellow employees who has done it before gives them a hand, teaches them a few things, but it's inconsistent, maybe a lot of times not even correct, and inadequate. Another way to do it is to get training from educational companies. In my own company, MedTech Safety, we offer 9 courses on medical device risk management. They range from the introduction and basic fundamentals all the way to risk management for top management to give them the skills they need to make decisions at the high level for the whole company. We have skills courses like failure modes and effects analysis, fault tree analysis. We have training courses for clinical investigators, all kinds. So that's another way. Besides my company, there are other providers of education. A famous one is AAMI, AAMI, which is the Association for Medical Device Manufacturers. And they also offer courses. So there are a number of places to take courses. But in any event, I recommend that people take in-person training. I find that when I teach in person, the learning experience is far better for the students than when they take a course online. You can imagine how your attention is not as focused when you're online. You know, you could be distracted by your emails or I don't know, your child in the home or whatever. So try to take the training in person if you can at all.
Or even on demand courses that you kind of go at your own pace. And you may lose that kind of a discipline that you really need to pay attention to because this gets pretty technical. A couple of questions. So when you're talking about the schools don't offer this as much as they should, we're mostly talking about the engineering department in the schools.
Yeah, typically, yeah, it's usually biomedical engineering school. Yeah.
And then and your training is for what audience? Who are the people or that come to your courses and your programs?
So when I teach, majority of my students are from R&D and quality. It happens that most companies assign the job of risk management to the department of the quality department. But engineering has more technical knowledge about the product, so I think they're better equipped to take this training. So yeah, majority are R&D quality, but other people that take my courses include regulators, regulatory staff in the company. I've had physicians, a lot of physicians and nurses take my courses because they have an interesting different angle on it. Their job is to look at how a patient's body can get harmed by a medical device. And this is not the area of expertise of an engineer. This is the area of expertise of a medical clinician. So they also need to understand risk management. So they also take my courses. And then I have some management people, top management that have taken my classes because, top management has to make the decision as to do we release this product? Do we recall this product? These high-level decisions that they need to be made, but they need to also understand risk management. And so they take my courses too.
And then, in your courses, and I know you've trained over 10,000 and educated over 10,000 professionals worldwide. What are the one or two key knowledge gaps that you have encountered in all of your trainings? Is it just the basic even understanding of risk management? Is it just even getting to the fact that why we need to have it? Where do you see that, especially for smaller startup companies?
Yeah, interestingly, the most common knowledge gap is the fundamental understanding of risk and the language of risk management. You see, risk management is like any other discipline. It has its own jargon. We have specific terms that can create confusion because, like I'll say that one of the terms is hazardous situation. A hazardous situation, as understood colloquially, by reading a dictionary is not the same thing as a hazardous situation as defined in ISO 14971. So this mismatch creates a lot of confusion and errors in terms of how do we communicate with each other, how do we communicate with regulators, how do we do the analysis. So one of the areas that I found is, it seems like the most fundamental, but also the most prevalent, is just basic understanding of the language of risk management and the terminology.
Right. Just the basic fundamental stuff to get going. At least the good news is that they have realized that they need to understand what it is, right, in order to bring that knowledge back to the organization to excel the product development. Um, and it's good that there are companies like yours and others that are out there that are actually providing that, because there seems to be a huge gap from when you graduate from school and then you start your job and your boss or somebody else is just teaching you, well, this is how I learn it, which, as you mentioned, it may not be necessarily the right way, or even if it's the right way, it may not be the most efficient or updated way to do that. Is just passing knowledge from one kind of a generation to the next one. How do you what do you think how do you advise companies to anticipate risk management that it may not be like immediately apparent to them? How do you even manage that kind of a piece of the business, that I have a company that I don't even anticipate any risk in this, and you're coming in consulting with them and saying, no, wait a minute, these are all whole risk of the risk that you'll be taking with this product if you don't follow this kind of a structured way of developing your product. And that's probably doesn't go very easy with some of the clients that you're consulting.
Even if a company thinks, oh, my product has no risk, which is really not, it's impossible. Every product has risk. It is mandatory that if they want to get their product approved, they need to do risk management. They need to do formal risk management and submit a report to a regulator like the FDA or say European notified body that this product is acceptably safe based on this analysis, based on this objective analysis. It's not just because I say so. I can't just say, oh, trust me, this product that has little risk. They won't buy that. And so it is automatically built in that if you want to commercialize a product, or if you want to even not commercialize a product, if you want to use a product on a human being, because sometimes you just do clinical trials, even for that, you need to do risk management. So unless somebody is just tinkering and experimenting from building something and has no intention of building a medical device, and it'll never touch a human body, then you don't have to worry about risk management. But most companies don't want to waste time and money, or even sometimes it's in the universities. Sometimes it's not even a company. Maybe a university is doing a research project and they think, okay, we can have this great idea. They can be just doing pure research. At that point, it's not even intended to be a medical device. So then they don't do risk management. But then as their thinking starts shifting from that to going from just a pure research idea, laboratory idea, toward a medical device that's going to be used on a human being, they need to consider risk management.
Mm-hmm. The stakes is a lot higher. And is there a major, or I should ask, well, what are the major differences between the risk management in medical device and MedTech versus drugs and in pharma? Are there a couple of major differences that we should be aware of?
Well, they're governed by different standards. Medical devices are governed by ISO 14971, but pharma is ICH-Q9. They have different approaches. I personally have not worked in the pharma part of the risk management. The closest that I have come to it has been in combinational devices where a medical device is combined with a pharmaceutical, something like a coated stent or a syringe for an infusion pump, a pre-filled syringe, those kinds of things. And then the risk management of that is a combination of the risks of the device and the pharma. We need to consider what kind of risks the pharma aspect of it has brought. So that information comes from the pharma aspect. What kinds of risks come from the device side, because that comes from the device side. And then what kinds of risks come about from the interaction of the pharma with the device, because they could have adverse impact on each other, the device on the drug and the drug on the device. So we consider all these three types of risks and then do a risk management. But from just the pure pharmaceutical risks, I haven't worked in that area.
Very good. Thank you, Bijan. My last question, I want to ask you about any advice that you have, maybe for some people that are just starting their career, or maybe they're in mid-career and they're very much interested in risk management aspect of medical devices. What do you advise them to do? And where do you see the future of risk management in general? 5 years, 10 years from now.
Okay. So for a person who's just starting and is interested in this subject, first of all, I'm glad to hear that they are interested, because it's not a very popular area. There are not many people who work in risk management, but get some training. My first advice: get some training. Read books. You can. There are a number of books now, like mine. Read these books. Take some training. If you can find formal training, of course, it's better. But informal training is also good. And I would say, approach your management, your company's management, express your interest in risk management, because I'm sure they would love it to hear somebody is interested in it, because a lot of times people do it, but they're not loving it.
Yeah, because they have to.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I have not met many people that tell me risk management is their passion. I mean, I've met 10 people that have told me this. So there's not that many people that say, I love this. I mean, I'm one of them. So if you have a passion for risk management, definitely express it to your management, and I think that would definitely put you in the sense of in a point of leadership in that area. Because when you're passionate about something, you have the energy and the drive to excel at it, and that's what it takes.
Do you find it to be a growing career, and more people are getting interested and they want to build?
It seems that way, yeah. Because regulators are more and more expecting risk management and culture of safety to be a part of a company. They expect companies to imbue the whole organization and the culture that safety is important. We need to make as safe a product as we possibly can. It is the survival of the company, basically, that the products be safe and of high quality. And then there's another aspect, which is besides the risk management, EU MDR, medical device regulation, and ISO 13485, which is the standard for quality. They mention in many places that they expect a risk-based approach to all aspects of the operation of a company. This includes the product development, but also supply chain, sourcing, manufacturing, every way, to have a risk-based approach. And this means you need to understand risk. You need to know what the risks are, and then incorporate that thinking in all operations of your company. So I think for these reasons, I see more people over the years now that are getting into risk management.
Right. And hopefully there'll be a lot more than 10 people being passionate about it.
I think that number will grow.
Right. Yeah, there will be. Well, Bijan, thank you very much for your time. This was a great conversation, and I'm sure we walked away with a lot of great insights for our listeners. I know I learned a lot just talking to you. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ramin.
Thanks for tuning in to the Emerging Biotech Leader, an SSI strategy podcast. Join us each month for more conversations with biotech leaders. If you'd like to help navigating the complexities of biotech, reach out to our team at ssistrategy.com. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review.